Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday morning to you. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And this is video number 7 as I am reviewing and responding to the book Mystery Babylon, Unlocking the Bible's Greatest Prophetic Mystery by Joel Richardson. Now, as you probably know by now, I engaged Mr. Richardson on his Twitter feed, asking him to engage me in formal public debate or to have a YouTube debate with me. He responded that that was arrogant, that was condescending, that was dishonest. He accused me and other preterists of believing things which we do not believe. And when I challenged him to verify, to document his claims against the preterist movement, he blocked me. And in subsequent posts by other people who likewise went to Twitter and asked him to debate me, he instantly blocked them as well. It's very obvious that Mr. Richardson has no interest in dialogue. He has no interest in having his views examined in a public way for everyone to see his views as compared to the views of others. You know, Proverbs 18 says, when the first man speaks and makes his case, it sounds great until the second man speaks and answers and gives the contrary view. That's obviously a paraphrase. And that seems to be the case with Mr. Richardson. Well, what I'm doing is demonstrating the fallacy, the presuppositional fallacies of Mr. Richardson in this book. And this morning I've been reading in the section on the woman and the beast. This is page 70 and following. And I have to tell you, this is some of the most confused and confusing bit of literature that I have read. You will seldom find anything that is any more presuppositional. He talks about the 7 beasts, the 7 kings, that are in Revelation chapter 17. And he tells us, without any proof whatsoever, that those 7 kings represent 7 past or 7 empires. And he simply asserts the first head of the beast. Now, he recognizes the beast, Revelation 13, Revelation 17, as a singular beast. But then he jumps and he says that the 7 heads, 10 horns represents 7 empires, just like the beast is an empire. Does he seek to prove that? No, he just simply asserts it to be true. And look, folks, you can assert anything you want to. You can say anything you want to. But when you are attempting to demonstrate the identity of Babylon of Revelation, to go to one of the most pivotal chapters in the entire book for identifying Babylon, and to simply say, well, you know, we got 7 kings here, and those 7 kings represent 7 empires, without demonstrating that to be the truth, then that's presuppositional. And let me say again, it proves nothing whatsoever. So what does he do? He identifies those 7 kings as 7 empires, starting with Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persian, Grecian, and Roman. Well, then what does he do? For all practical purposes, he then completely eliminates the Roman Empire. And on page 75, he gives us those 7 kings, i.e. 7 empires, and says Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece, Roman, Islamic Empire, and then the revived Islamic Empire of the Antichrist. Now, once again, I have to tell you, folks, this is so presuppositional. He gives us not one word of exegesis. He asserts without proof. And he says things like this, page 74. I would suggest that the only real candidate, now this is the seventh head, the only real candidate, the only empire in history. Now remember, Revelation 17 says that these seven heads are seven kings. So you have seven heads, which are then interpreted as seven kings. But then Mr. Richardson interprets the seven kings as a symbolic reference and says seven kings represent seven empires. No, seven heads are symbolic. Those seven heads represent seven kings. The seven kings are the interpretation of the heads. It is not another symbolic reference. So he has a twofold symbolic reference, whereas there's only one. Seven heads represent seven kings. But then he says, I would suggest that the only real candidate, the only empire in history that follows in the footsteps of and completes the clearly established pattern set by the previous six empires is what we could refer to as the historical Islamic empire. Now catch this. He is identifying the Islamic caliphate as the beast of Revelation. Okay? Now remember, the basic fundamental fallacy of this is he's making the seven kings refer to seven empires when the seven kings are the interpretation of the seven heads. Seven heads is symbolic. Symbolic of what? Symbolic of seven kings. Seven kings are not symbolic of seven empires. If you can make that double symbolism, then why can't you make seven empires symbolic and have a tertiary symbolism? It just doesn't work. But you see, this is not the real problem here. But then he says, if the identity of the seventh head after Rome is the Islamic caliphate, then this would mean that a revived caliphate, the final yet short-lived empire of the Antichrist, is the eighth kingdom. And then he proceeds to give us his outline. Well, here's the problem. Among many, many other problems, he is essentially equating the Islamic caliphate in one shape, form, or fashion as the Roman Empire. Either that or he's completely overlooking Rome in the countdown. Now, here's something fascinating, and I got to hurry here. Okay, he agrees that Daniel chapter 2 and Daniel chapter 7 serves as the source of Revelation 13 and 17. Okay, Daniel chapter 2, Daniel only saw 4 kingdoms: Babylonian, Medo-Persian, Greece, Rome. What does Mr. Richardson do? He says, well, that fourth empire has 2 phases to it. And that the second phase is the Islamic caliphate, and then the revived Islamic caliphate. Folks, there's nothing at all in the text of Daniel 2 or Daniel 7 to suggest that. 4 kingdoms. Now look, Rome ceased to exist in 476 AD. The Islamic religion didn't even begin to take off and to be established until the 600s. Well over 100 years after the end of that fourth beast. You can't have the Islamic caliphate as Rome, any form of Rome, without violating history. It just doesn't work. There, and by the way, we have the same picture in Daniel chapter 7, 4 beasts that arise. 4 beasts. Not 4 plus 1 plus another. Not 4 with the 4th being extended hundreds of years. 4 beasts. And the little horn, by the way, would arise in the days of that fourth empire. And that little horn would be judged at the appearing of the Son of Man. Now, who is the Son of Man? Jesus. And Jesus said he, as the Son of Man, was coming in judgment of the persecuting power in his generation. Matthew 24, 30 through 34. So here's what we have. Daniel 2 and Daniel 7 present to us 4 empires. Not 5, not 6, and not 7. That's it. 4. In the days of that fourth empire, the little horn would arise, and the Son of Man would come and judge him and destroy him. Jesus said he was the Son of Man, and he was coming in that generation, and he was going to destroy, pardon me, the persecuting power, i.e. the little horn, when he came in judgment of Israel in AD 70, Matthew 24, 29 to 34. That means that Daniel 2 and Daniel 7 were fulfilled in the days of Rome in the first century in the coming of Jesus as the Son of Man. You cannot extrapolate Daniel 2 and Daniel 7 to the time of the 7th century and the rise of the Islamic religion. You cannot take Revelation 13 and 17 and rip them out of their context, which was, these things must shortly come to pass. And let me tell you, hundreds of years, biblically speaking, is not these things must shortly come to pass. So, Mr. Richardson violates Daniel 2, Daniel 7, Revelation 13, and Revelation chapter 7. He turns a symbolic reference, i.e., 7 heads, and the interpretation of the heads as 7 kings, and he makes the 7 kings another symbolic reference. No such indication in Revelation chapter 17. Number 2, he absolutely, completely, and totally violates Daniel 2 and Daniel 7, which give us a vision of only 4 kingdoms. Not 4 kingdoms plus 1 plus 2. It is not the 4th kingdom extended 200 years after the 4th kingdom perished. Every single thing about Mr. Richardson's claims concerning these, quote, empires violates the text, violates the prophecies, violates the time indicators in the book of Revelation. And not only that, as I'm going to show you in our very next video, video number 8, his identification of the beast as the Islamic Caliphate and Babylon as Mecca absolutely cannot be true biblically. It is an overt rejection of what the Bible teaches. In fact, it is unimaginable. Absolutely unimaginable. Okay, thank you for joining me for this morning's morning musings. And by the way, I cover a good bit of this territory in my book, Who is This Babylon? And as I've offered in my YouTube and Facebook presentations this week, if you go to my website, donkpreston.com or BibleProphecy.com, and you order the book, Who is This Babylon? And you send me a note that says, hey, Don, I saw your offer on YouTube or Facebook. I will give you free of charge, no extra charge whatsoever, a copy of my book, Blast from the Past, The Truth About Armageddon. You know what? This little book, all by itself, is an utter 100% refutation of Mr. Joel Richardson's book. Easy to read, simple, powerful, and irrefutable. So, go to my website, order the book, Who is This Babylon? Tell me you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook, and I'll give you free of charge Blast from the Past. Well, thanks again for joining me for this morning's Morning Musings. You have a fantastic weekend. Lord willing, we'll see you on Monday.